So CinemaCon was this week, and at CinemaCon we heard some things about DC Studios. We saw the Joker 2 trailer, and the Superman logo released like a proper front-on look at it. Now I'm not sure if that was officially released or if it was leaked or whatnot, because there was a video that Peter Safran and James Gunn sent in talking about Superman. That video wasn't released, but the logo was shown at that, and then a few hours after the presentation or the little talk that they had at CinemaCon, the picture of the logo started spreading. So I'm not sure if that's officially, this was supposed to be released, or if Sony just took a picture they weren't supposed to. But we have currently 13 announced projects in the DC universe, and I have a lot of very different thoughts on all of the projects, so I thought it'd be fun to kind of rank the projects in terms of how hyped I am, or my most anticipated, from 13 all the way down to 1. So yeah, I'm not really gonna kind of talk too much before it, so let's talk about these projects. So in 13th and last place, I have Creature Commandos, which is the first project on the DC Universe slate. It's supposed to come out later on this year, which it'll be the first project to come out before 2025, so that is exciting. And I should also preface this by saying that I am excited for every project on the list. There's not one of these projects that I won't be watching as soon as it comes out. Just some of them I'm a lot more excited than other ones. Some of them I'm a bit apprehensive about, just based off of DC's track record. Creature Commandos is a project that I just still do not think should be the first project in the DC Universe slate. I know that it's not supposed to be very important, that it's one of these projects that you can skip and you can just start with Superman or whatever, but I still think we should be maybe gearing the DC Universe to start completely with Superman, and even all this extra content like Creature Commandos, have that come out a little later. It's animated, it's a very James Gunn project from the look of it. Now, we've barely seen anything, but just based off of the characters they're using and the sort of team that they're going for here, it does feel very James Gunn-esque, which isn't a bad thing. I'm not entirely sure if I'm into that idea for the very first project. And I think maybe you save that for later, you save it for 5 or 6 projects in, you don't do it now, because even though it is supposed to be skippable and you can start with Superman, I still think, to a lot of people who are paying attention to this stuff, they're still going to go, oh, this is the first DCU project. They're not going to look into what James Gunn said about it. They're just going to see that it's a DC Universe project. They're going to watch it, and then they're going to be like, wait, this is the first project in their new universe? That's a bit strange. Anyway, it could be great, could be the greatest thing ever. Honestly, I'm expecting it to be very well liked. I'm expecting it to be one of those projects that when it comes out, it starts spreading around social media and stuff, and you start hearing people who aren't overly into comic book stuff kind of going, whoa, look at this new animated show that came out from James Gunn. It's actually really cool. I think this is probably going to be one of those projects. Peacemaker Season 1 was very much like that, where it was one of those things that came out, mostly DC fans just watching it, and then scenes from it started spreading in other places, and you saw people who weren't traditionally DC fans being like, this looks really cool, I'll check this out. I think Creature Commandos is probably going to be up that alley. I would be very surprised if this comes out and everyone's like, this is terrible. If it comes out and the reviews are terrible for it, that's going to be such a bad start to the DC Universe. So I have a feeling he's got faith in it, he's got confidence in this project, but I don't think he'd also be releasing it as the first one if it wasn't going to be a slam dunk. 12th place, I have the Arkham series. So we don't have an official name for this, we don't know when it's coming out. A series set in Arkham Asylum, it's supposed to kind of flesh out some of the villains and characters of Batman in the DC Universe. Now, the reason why this is so low is because I feel a little weird about this project, mainly because it was originally in the Matt Reeves The Batman universe, and for some reason they lied once they changed what universe it was in and came out and were like, yeah, no, this was never the Matt Reeves universe, this was never the Batman stuff. Don't know where you heard that, that's not a thing, even though there's articles that are like, this was Matt Reeves. When it was first announced, it was announced as part of the Batman Pattinson stuff. It was announced as originally a GCPD show, and then it changed into an Arkham show, and now it's this thing in the DC universe, which again, I'm not opposed to this sort of idea, but I think just DC in general, so many of DC's projects from the last decade or so have been very similar to this. We had 5 seasons of Gotham, we have the Joker films, we have the Harley Quinn animated show, a lot of the stuff that deals with a lot of Batman's rogue galleries, a lot of the Arkham Asylum sort of oriented parts of Batman as a character, and I don't know, I'm kind of over it. I understand the necessity for it, it's to flesh out the Batman villains outside of the film and stuff like that, and I think that that's a good idea, but I'm so oversaturated with Batman stuff because so much of DC's movies and projects from the last 15-20 years have been Batman related that my most excited things for the DC universe outside of Creature Commandos is the new stuff. A lot of the things high up on my list are kind of focused on characters and projects that we haven't seen properly done in a DC universe yet, and Arkham, to me, just what we know of, which is just literally the article that first announced it, to me this doesn't sound like something that's fresh or new for DC as a brand. It feels like something that has been done a ton of times already, and sure, it might be great. I'm sure it will be. I'll be very surprised if this comes out it's not great, but to me, there's a lot of other things on this list that I'm way more interested in. In 11th place is the other Batman project on this list, and it's The Brave and the Bold. Also, just want to say that I don't think The Brave and the Bold is sticking as a title. I know that that's kind of a reference to the comic, and it's also a reference to the animated series, but I think that based off of the fact they changed Superman Legacy to just Superman, I think they're probably going to go more traditional and maybe have this just be called Batman, which I'm okay with that. I think it's a good branding thing is to have a lot of these projects just be the names of the characters. But again, similar to the Arkham series, I feel like this is just sort of something that I'm a little oversaturated, I'm a little over Batman. Now, this one, I understand completely why this is early on in the DCU. I don't think this should be a project that should be coming out much later than it is. I think it makes sense to come out. It's probably going to be getting like a 2027 release date, probably just after the Batman 2, which it's just the Batman as well. Like, with that coming out so close to this, it just makes me not as interested as I would be if this was the only Batman project we were getting. Now, seeing Damian Wayne getting a proper Batman and Robin in live action, that's going to be really, really, really exciting, and that's something that, despite Robin being such a big part of Batman in the comics and in like the games and in the animated series, we've rarely seen that done in live action. So that is really exciting. But just simply based off of Batman as a character being so overused in DC, it's something I'm not interested really too much in. It's also similar to everything else other than the Robin stuff. It's not a new, fresh idea. It's something that we've seen so many times before. In 10th place, I have Peacemaker Season 2. Now, I liked Season 1 a lot. I thought Season 1 was a really, really, really good season of TV, but most of my excitement for the DCU, like I said, is coming from new projects, and Season 2 being tied so heavily to the DCEU based off the fact that Season 1 is in the DCEU is so weird to me. Now, they have said that yes, Peacemaker Season 2 is essentially a reboot, that Season 1 will not be integral viewing, Season 1 happened in the DCEU, and Season 2 is going to be in the DCU fully. But I still think that's just such a weird thing from an outsider perspective for new fans coming in, that it's an unusual idea, and it sort of, coming in to watch a Peacemaker Season 2, you're going to want to have seen Season 1 even if it's not connected, because it's still technically the same TV show, and that sort of brings in the elements of, well, if you're watching Season 1, do you need to watch some DCEU stuff? Like, do you need to watch the old Suicide Squad films? Do you need to watch anything to do with the Justice League since they're in Peacemaker Season 1? It just gets a little grey, and I think that for a brand new audience, this might be a weird choice. Now, my personal hope is that Peacemaker Season 2 is just sort of the placeholder name, and that the actual thing is going to just be a completely new title. Like, I don't know, like Peacemaker saves the DC universe. I know that's a very Deadpool thing to call it, but I think they should really showcase why this is not Season 1, why this is different to Season 1, like retroactively call Season 1 just Peacemaker and call Peacemaker Season 2, I don't know, give it a subtitle to kind of maybe tease that this is actually a new show, or this isn't connected to what came before. Like, Season 1 maybe happened in the new canon of the DCU, just with different things in different places, but that this actual season is its own thing and its standalone thing. And I think that would be the best decision to make, so maybe they'll do that, and if they do, I don't know if it would shoot up on my list in terms of anticipation. There's so many new things coming out of the DC universe that seeing another season of Peacemaker isn't exactly something I'm overly excited for, but again, I'm going to be there day one. In 9th, I have Swamp Thing. Now, this is a little bit opposite to what I've been saying, where I was like, I really want the DC Universe to do new things. Swamp Thing is pretty new. We had the old films from the 80s, we had the live action show on DC Universe, and other than that, we haven't really seen the character at all. But Swamp Thing for me is a character I've never been overly interested in. I've read some of the comics, I've seen him in a lot of the other DC areas in the comics as well, and he's never been a character that has, I guess, made me excited. But like, the thing with Swamp Thing, I think that the character elements of him are more interesting than the monster element. Just monsters in general are never things that get me excited. Like, Gorilla Grodd is a villain that so many people love from the Flash mythos, from the Flash Rose Gallery. And to me, Gorilla Grodd has always been one of the more boring Flash villains. Similarly, I don't care for things like Godzilla or King Kong because I just don't think monsters are that interesting, but that's just a me thing. And Swamp Thing is very much like that, where I'm sure the more human elements of the project are going to be really interesting, but Swamp Thing is like this monstrous thing is not something that really excites me at all. Now, the reason why this is not around Creature Commandos on this list is because James Mangold is involved as directing, and I think James Mangold is a great director, so I'm there for it because of that. That is why I think it could be really interesting and could be something really unique and something that I'm excited for. If James Mangold wasn't involved, this would be a lot lower on the list, potentially last on the list. But we'll see, this could be the thing that makes me a Swamp Thing fan, because, I mean, the live action show a lot of people loved it. I remember when it came out and people were like, this is one of the greatest comic book shows we've ever had. And to me, I was just straight away like, I don't find this very interesting at all, unfortunately. And I watched the whole thing and I kept hoping that I'd get excited or get into it, and I just never really could. In 8th place, I have Paradise Lost. This is the Themyscira, Paradise Island, Amazonian-focused Game of Thrones-style TV show is what they're calling it, which is going to be sort of a prequel to the Wonder Woman stuff, whatever the Wonder Woman stuff is in the DCU. And this is the one project so far that is going to live or die based on what I see about it. So in terms of my hype level, it's either going to go up or down based on what the trailer or the teaser, and I guess you could say that about everything, but I think Paradise Lost for me at the moment is very much in the middle of this list because I don't know how to feel about it, and I'm not going to know how to feel about it until I see that first look at it. Everything else I can kind of already judge based off of what the project is, but this one I'm just straight off like, I really got to see that trailer. I got to see what they're doing, because personally I would like, I guess, a Wonder Woman project first or something that has Wonder Woman in it. Not to say Wonder Woman won't be in this, maybe Diana will be in this, but from what we know about so far, it seems like it's going to be before Diana. So I think we just need to see what it looks like. I think that the way they're describing it sounds really cool, sounds really interesting, sounds like it's going to be very unique and different, and the Themyscira parts of the Wonder Woman films were always great, so something similar to that could be really cool. But yeah, we'll see what it is anyway. That this seems like something that's still a bit a ways away in terms of what's coming up. It feels like Creature Commandos, Peacemaker, Waller, Superman, Supergirl, Brave and the Bold are all going to be moving ahead before Paradise Lost. So a little bit of time still. In 7th place, I have The Authority, and this is very similar to Paradise Lost in that I really do need to see what this is before I get excited for it. But I'm a little bit more apprehensive about The Authority than I am with Paradise Lost, because I think this is just a project that we've seen so many versions of over the last few years. Now, admittedly, The Authority is one area of DC that I'm actually not that familiar with. I've read the Superman and the Authority comics. They don't really give too much of an insight into them, and I've never really gone out of my way to read their solo stuff, so they're not characters, I guess, outside of Midnight or Apollo that I'm overly familiar with. And I think that just the idea of them and what sort of James Gunn has described them as so far, it feels to me like it's similar to a Suicide Squad or a Thunderbolts or an Evil Justice League, or I guess not Evil Justice League, I guess there's Morally Grey Justice League or a Morally Grey 7 from The Boys. And to me, that's just something we've seen so much of lately. Like, we have Thunderbolts coming out next year. We've had Suicide Squad in so many different forms. We're getting more Suicide Squad content this year with the anime. We have the 7 from The Boys all the time. We have evil versions of Justice League characters all the time. That Thunderbolts really needs to be fresh. It really needs to be different. And if done well, this could be great. Like, it could be a really interesting character project that digs into these characters and showcases why they are different to our traditional Justice League characters and why they are sort of not the heroes we should be looking up to in this universe. I think by the time it comes out, it could already feel like a project that we've seen so much of and that is already dated. And I think the DC universe really needs to be fresh, and The Authority really does have the potential to be fresh, but it also has the potential to just be something we've seen done over and over and over again the last few years. So I think it really depends on what it looks like and what they do with these characters. In 6th place, I have Teen Titans. This is the most recent film announced, as well, the most recent project in general announced as a film a few weeks ago, and this could be very, very, very cool. Probably going to be tied to Brave and the Bold a bit, considering Damian Wayne's Robin is going to be in that, so they'll probably incorporate Damian Wayne into this. And it'll be cool to see a proper Teen Titans in live action, because we've never really seen a proper Teen Titans in live action yet. Titans was Titans. But hopefully this would be very similar to like the 80s run and I guess the 2003 animated series, as sort of this project that really digs into the mythos of these characters and the villains and stuff like that. So maybe more like them and less like Titans, and a little less like Teen Titans Go. I've never watched overly much of Teen Titans Go, but from what I've seen, I would like it to be more like the 2003 animated series, I think, than that. Now, similar, I think my hype will be completely based around the lineup and what characters they're choosing. I think they should go with the traditional lineup, with maybe Damian being present as Robin instead of Dick Grayson, but keeping all the other characters maybe similar or maybe the same. Could bring in Dick Grayson as Nightwing, and then Deathstroke as a villain would be really cool. Kind of go with not necessarily doing the Judas contract already, but doing something similar with the character, setting up that rivalry could be really interesting. I think this is a project that they could get this out there before even Marvel does Young Avengers, which could really set DC apart by already having their sort of their younger lineup present from almost the get-go. It could also be really cool to kind of see the parallels between the Teen Titans and the Justice League in this new DC universe as they're sort of growing at the same time. I think that'll be really cool, so we'll wait and see. Waller is another project I'm a little apprehensive about due to its ties to the DCEU, with Viola Davis reprising her role as Amanda Waller, and then we're also tying that into Peacemaker Season 1 a little bit and bringing the whole Peacemaker cast over. It feels like a lot of ties to the DCEU. It's similar to Peacemaker. I'm feeling like maybe it might feel to new people coming in that they have to do a little bit of homework to feel up to date on the show, which I really hope is not the case. But I do really like the idea of this being a deep look into Amanda Waller as a character. That's kind of exciting. Tying it into Peacemaker Season 2 could be really cool and create this nice little overarching story. I guess I'm overall worried that they might put too much into it that doesn't really work for new fans, because this DC universe really does need to feel fresh for a whole new audience. But again, as a character project, this could be really cool. We never really got to see a whole lot of Amanda Waller on her own in the other projects in the DCU, like she was in the 2 Suicide Squad films and Peacemaker Season 1, but never really a whole lot, kind of just, I guess, cameo scenes throughout all those projects. But she was amazing in every scene she was in, so I would really like to see full focus on her in this project, which I think is good. Also, Viola Davis is fantastic as the character. Like, she just kind of nails what Amanda Waller should be, so I think that alone makes this a project worthwhile, and I really do want to see it. Now, these last 4 projects, I would say I've got pretty much zero issues or complaints or worries about any of them, just complete excitement for all of them. And in 4th place, I have the TV show Booster Gold, which this is exciting because Booster is such a cool character, and this is something that it feels like DC fans have been asking for since, I don't know, like 20 years ago, to get us a Booster Gold project. It felt like Legends of Tomorrow was leading up to it before it was cancelled. Got to see the character briefly in Smallville. It felt like Blue Beetle originally might have dealt with some things before the whole DCEU changed a little bit, but this is just so exciting. I think a character study into the character could be really cool. It's just the time travel aspects, the Skeets aspect, who Booster Gold is underneath that sort of facade of trying to act like he's this big important guy when really he's just somebody who wants to do the right thing and is kind of also wants a little bit of fame, and he kind of wants what other heroes have. It's just it all leads for what could be really interesting. I think kind of pairing Booster here up with Jaime in the Blue Beetle film, or whatever they do with Blue Beetle going forward, maybe bring in Ted Kord as well. I think that could be a really cool little pocket area of the DC universe. I'd love to see like the 2 Blue Beetles and Booster Gold, maybe the tie that into Justice League International a little bit with Guy Gardner and Mr. Terrific and all of those characters. Really excited for this, can't wait to see what they do. In 3rd place, I have Supergirl One of Tomorrow, and yes, my Superman-Supergirl bias is definitely showing here, but I'm very excited for this because I think that the script, what they've talked about so far, sounds really exciting. Like how they've talked about how they're not going to go ahead with a project unless they're already kind of happy with a story and with a script, and that depending on how good a script is, they'll just fast-track that project. And apparently the Supergirl script is fantastic because they're already moving pretty quickly on this project so far, and it's going to be awesome to see a ton of Kara and Clark stuff together in the DCU. We've kind of only seen that in Supergirl a little bit and kind of a little bit in the crossovers of the Arrowverse. Never really saw it too much in Smallville. Kara was around, but that was before Clark was probably Superman, so it'll be cool to see what they do here between those cousins, and if there's a lot of scenes of them together once that they both make their debut. I think this version of Kara is going to be really interesting. Definitely a lot more like Sasha Cal's version in The Flash than I guess Melissa Benoist's version in the Arrowverse. Probably inspired a little bit by the Smallville version as well, Lara Vandervoort. So I think this is going to be really cool. And I think that the casting so far is great as well. I think we're looking at something really special in this character. In 2nd place, I have Lanterns, and it has been described as a HBO-style TV show modeled after True Detective, starring Jon Stewart and Hal Jordan doing some detective work and exploring a mystery and investigating. And I think this sounds absolutely amazing. If I didn't have a serious Superman bias, this would be number 1, but I need this project now. Like, I think this is going to be so great, so exciting. So finally getting Green Lantern content properly is amazing, but Jon Stewart and Hal Jordan are both great characters, and pairing them up to do this detective story that's going to come back to Earth and see kind of the cosmic side of the DC universe, which so far in any version of DC, it feels like the cosmic aspect is something we never really get a lot of. We have things focused on other planets, but we never see kind of the full scale of what cosmic DC is. Definitely not in the way I guess the MCU has been doing with the Guardians of the Galaxy. So it makes sense that through his Guardians of the Galaxy knowledge, James Gunn is bringing that into the DCU and doing it now with lanterns and stuff like that. I think this feels like it's going to be a very gritty, character focused show here, and I think that's going to be super exciting. I'm just interested to see how this ties to the rest of the projects, because all these projects are surely going to have to tie together or come together at some point. So I'm excited to see how all these different projects do, because this feels like early MCU, where the first phase of the MCU, all these projects and films felt so different in terms of their tone, their direction, everything about them. And then we have a very similar feeling here, where currently all these projects feel like they're all very different. And I'm excited to see how they contrast with each other and how they connect. And in first place, I have Superman, used to be Superman Legacy, now I have a logo. We've had a logo for a while, but now we've got a new look at the logo. And like, what is there to say? I've already talked about this in a few videos, but to me, I think there's no way this film isn't peak. Like, I'm so excited to see what James Gunn does here, because I think the castings have been great. I think James Gunn's style is going to complement this version very, very, very well. Like, the more emotional aspects of the Guardians of the Galaxy movies are so unbelievably well done that I think that that's going to be just what this film needs. Just finally getting another solo Superman films after 12 years since Man of Steel by the time this comes out is going to be great. And I guess the first, it's going to feel like, I guess, a very traditional Superman film in a sense, where it's going to feel, I guess, like a modern day version of the 1978 version of the character. And I'm so excited to see that too. Like, I want this movie to make an impact. I want kind of this movie to do to Superman what I guess the Batman did to Batman in 2022, where that film came out and straight away everyone was like, oh, did you see the Batman? Did you see the Batman? That was so great. Robert Pattinson was a great version of the character. I want this to come out, and I want it to do well, and I want everyone to be talking about Superman. So super excited for this. I think like Superman, Lanterns, Supergirl, these are the kind of projects that are making me really, 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 really excited for what they're doing in the DC universe going forward. But how do you feel about all these projects? Is there anything on the DCU slate that you are really excited for? Anything you're not really excited for? Is there any projects that you're like, I'd like to do this instead, I'd like to trade this for this? Why not let me know? If you enjoyed this video, maybe like, share if somebody you think might like it, maybe subscribe. That would be awesome, and I hope you have an amazing day.